Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here today with Bruce McCurdy. Hey, Bruce.
Hey, David. How are you this morning?
Pretty good. I was up till 4 a.m. because I couldn't get to sleep. I was playing in my beer league hockey, although no one has a beer after the games anymore. It's not like the old days in the 80s.
Right.
At least I don't. Had an exciting overtime game in my beer league, and sometimes you just can't get to sleep after you've played hockey. It's just really hard. You're just so wound up about it all for some reason. Your body is, at least.
So you pulled a McCurdy and you stayed up half the night writing a post, and then you couldn't get to sleep for another 2 hours after that. Been there, done that.
I don't get that excited after writing posts. It doesn't work me up like actually playing hockey.
No, but I've just been in that space where, you're finally done and you still can't get to sleep.
Yeah, that was my condition, Bruce. Is that what you have? You finish the post at like 1, 2 a.m. and then you still can't get to sleep? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty good sleeper usually.
Especially if I'm writing game grades after a West Coast game, and it's been a good, exciting game. Sometimes the old blood keeps pumping for a while. But it's nothing like playing a game like you did.
If they change daylight savings time, those West Coast games, and if they don't change it, it's like you have to, it's almost like watching the movie Tenet, putting together all the permutations of time forward and time back with the various daylight savings time regimes that may come in. But I just want to keep what we have, Bruce. That's where I've ended up. Like it's not that broken. Kind of works. Anyway, the Oilers, Bruce, some big news. I was up late. There was some big news that broke last night. Actually, Bob Stauffer has been rumoring this for some time now. This isn't really anything new. And Kurt dug into it in his post Sunday morning in his excellent 9 Things post, which is a must read on Sundays for people. And then Frank Seravalli also dug into it. And this is the notion that surprise, surprise, Adam Larsson isn't like a 90% certainty to sign in Edmonton, that he may explore the market, and that if they lose Larsson, the Oilers may double back, and Tyson Barrie may want to sign here and may sign here. So that's the gist of the news. I'll just start out by reading some of what Kurt wrote. I'll start with what Kurt wrote. And here we go. Quote, I do get mixed signals on the status of the Larsson negotiation. One source that would have an opportunity to speak with both sides in that negotiation thinks Larsson may in fact hit the UFA market, if for no other reason than to see which way the wind is blowing. When Philadelphia acquired Ryan Ellis on Saturday, I believe that subtracted Larsson's most likely suitor from the equation. But there could be others, including Seattle. Edmonton is also still talking with Tyson Barrie. I wonder if in the event that Larsson walks, does Barrie sign here instead and fill that hole at 2 right D? The price tag may not be that much different. And here's from Frank Seravalli from the Daily Face-Off podcast. And Frank said Sunday evening, quote, my understanding is that the Oilers and Adam Larsson are rather unlikely at this point to get something done and that he'll be heading to market. Now, I think that the development which is really interesting is that Tyson Barrie has a real chance to stay in Edmonton. That's been the sort of shift that's occurred over the last 4 or 5 days. Now, this morning, TSN's Ryan Rishaug, who's a very credible source, as are Kurt and Frank, followed up both of those takes, and he gave what I think is the definitive take at this moment in terms of where the Larsson negotiations are. And I'll read that now. Quote, on Adam Larsson, the simple fact is the player hasn't decided what he wants to do yet, and it could go either way. He is considering a few offers they feel are fair from the Oilers on different lengths, but he is taking his time, waiting to make a good decision for his future. Taking this much time leads to the perception that he's likely leaving, but I'm told that at this point, the Oilers are still a very strong option for him. My sense is the team is willing to be patient to a point while he makes this decision. Larsson is methodical and has been working on his own timeline through this process, not wanting to rush an important decision. The Oilers have offers there for him. He's in the process of deciding if he wants to stay or go. See what's out there. Could still go either way. So, Bruce, I think there was a little bit of misreading of Seravalli's quote last night.
Mm-hmm.
There was quite a bit of panic, discomfort at the very least, about the thought of Larsson leaving, and Seravalli saying Adam Larsson, Oilers and Adam Larsson are rather unlikely at this point to get something done, and that he'll be heading to market. People took too much they forgot the at this point. He's not saying Larsson's and the Oilers are unlikely to get something done. He's saying they're unlikely to get something done at this point.
Right.
And that doesn't mean when Larsson goes to market that he won't quickly re-sign here, or as Rashog makes clear. So what's your take on all of these different things?
Well, in one sense, Larsson is going to market right now. In that he's going to Seattle. Seattle's got 72-hour window to negotiate with all free agents, restricted or unrestricted, and they could sign one in lieu of picking a player off a team. Off a team's list, they could sign a free agent and essentially pick that guy off the list. And Adam Larsson is, he's a target the same way Tyson Barrie is a target, or any of the Oilers' restricted free agents are a target unless they're protected. Seattle can just flat out sign them during the next 72 hours. So he's going to be able to dip his toe in the water of the market before he even goes to the full market. But from the sounds of it, it may be that he'll see what Seattle has to say, and he may well wait until the 28th and see what's out there in the league. And then, the thing about when he's going to market, it doesn't mean he's gone from Edmonton, because Edmonton is very much part of the market. And they've had, lots of time to talk to Larsson, lots of time to make offers. And it may be a situation where his agent's saying, well, let's go out to market and see what the offers are. And if we get something sweeter, let's first circle back to the Oilers and say, up your offer to come close to matching this offer, and we'll stay, just to get a barometer of what his market value is. So
maybe they heard my $5.5 million per year valuation of Larsson.
Yeah.
Hey, Bruce, could you just check your mic and see that your Yeti microphone, your whatever microphone you're using, is, because you're sounding a little quiet to me, and it just might be at mine end. Probably is, but I just want to make sure that.
How's this?
Yeah, it's good. Just go. Does it say that it's using your Blue Snowball?
I just changed from default to Yeti.
To Blue Snowball, or you're using Yeti?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
Hopefully it works. It's right under. It's right here.
Yeah.
Oh.
All right. Yeah. In some ways, it would be kind of crazy. You've come this far. He hasn't signed yet. Why wouldn't you wait a few more days at least and see if something blows you away? Like if you could get more money, why wouldn't you do that? Seems to me like perfectly reasonable at this point to, test the market and, like you say, circle back if you get a good offer. Even if Edmonton, let's say you're almost convinced you want to stay here, it's a way to get more money out of Edmonton. That's negotiation. I would not blame anyone for doing that. I think it would be irresponsible of the agent to tell Larsson other than to do that. Whatever Adam Larsson wants, the agent's job is to try to maximize the money he can get for Adam Larsson and for himself, the agent. And they should do that. And that's not alarming. To me, the alarming thing is the thought that they would lose Adam Larsson. I do find that alarming. The thought of a Tyson Barrie, Evan Bouchard, Ethan Bear defense is interesting. I will give it that. It's provocative. But how many times have we heard, I think it's, Bob Stauffer on Oilers now say the Oilers want to get bigger on defense. Mm-hmm. And if getting bigger on defense is essentially replacing Adam Larsson with Duncan Keith,
Yeah.
Duncan Keith isn't bigger than Adam Larsson. He's not a particularly huge player, Duncan Keith. And bumping up Ethan Bear to be your shutdown defenseman over Adam Larsson, that's not a good idea. Terrible idea, possibly. Bruce, I valued Adam Larsson at $5.5 million a year on a 3-year deal, I should say, because I think he's been the Oilers' best defenseman the last 2 years at even strength. He had a couple iffy years when he had both. His father passed away, and was a huge shock because his father was a young man, and he also had back problems. So just when the Oilers were really struggling with Sekera getting hurt, Clefbaum getting banged up both I think happened to some extent. Sekera definitely got hurt in the 2017 Anaheim series, and Clefbaum may have aggravated his injury that playoff series as well. Adam Larsson also was banged up in the 2 years following, and it's a huge reason those 3 injury issues that the Oilers took a step back as a team those 2 seasons, I think. Larsson's back got better. In the last 2 years, he has been playing strong defensive hockey. Some of the strongest defensive hockey I've seen from an Oilers defenseman, since 2006, since Jason Smith and Pronger and Staios were players like that, were such fine defensive defensemen at that time. And I've said this many times on this podcast. I'll say it one more time here. If they lose Adam Larsson, Bruce, they will be searching for a player just like him for years. And there's no one immediately, at least in the farm system, who can replace him, I don't think. Dmitry Samorukov played right side defense. He's a lefty who played right side defense for CSKA Moscow. And in him, I see a player who in a couple years might be an effective shutdown D-man in the NHL. He plays that kind of game. He played it at least for CSKA. Just a very steady, big, physical, fast player. But he's a few years away, I think, from that. He would be perfect to take Adam Larsson's job maybe in a few years in that role. But I don't see him doing that now. Do you think they could replace him? I mean, there are Calgary got Tanev. Tanev's a good shutdown D-man, and there's some other ones out there.
Good comparable. Tanev's pretty good comparable. Well, I got Wild Bill Lagesson, who's a Swedish, big, tough, get in the way, highly competitive, grind him out, take no prisoners style of defenseman in the manner of Adam Larsson. But knew that was coming. But I do not see Lagesson as having the upside of Larsson. Like, to me, he's a very marginal third pairing defenseman at this point in time, whereas Larsson is a proven top 4 and in the shutdown role. I mean, you talk about the right side. Well, last year the Oilers ran the 4 defenders on the right side. Tyson Barrie, 5'11", 197. Ethan Bear, 5'11", 197. Evan Bouchard, 6'3", 194. And Adam Larsson, 6'3", 208. Like, he's by far the biggest and by far the most physical style of any of those guys. In fact, none of the other guys is, I would say, remotely physical. And
not
Larsson,
even fair.
Yeah, Larsson is absolutely a take no prisoners style. Just a second here, I'll look it up. Just getting hits from last year from the righties, and this is not going to be close. 166 for Larsson, 31 for Bear, 26 for Barrie, 11 for Bouchard. And I know hits isn't everybody's cup of tea, but it does tell you a lot about the player's style of play, I think. And Larsson's physicality, like, there's nothing even close on the right-hand side, not even close. And, they've got, of course, Darnell Nurse, who plays a rugged style on the left side. And, Darnell came here with a reputation of being a shutdown defenseman, I think in part because of the World Junior in 2015, in which he wasn't on the ice for a single goal against in the entire tournament. and he was used in the shutdown role, and he succeeded at it. But he is, to my eye, a high event defenseman who is, I wouldn't qualify him as shutdown. He's a cycle buster. He can be a cycle buster, but I wouldn't necessarily call him a shutdown. Oilers did use him in that role last year down the stretch of games, but when they paired him with Adam Larsson, the two of them were fine. And how the Oilers would, who do you put out there with a 1-goal lead and 3 minutes to go in the third period, or 1 minute to go in the third period? Who do you put out there? Tyson Barrie?
Both.
Bouchard?
Yeah.
No.
When they were protecting that lead that they gave up eventually against Winnipeg, what was it, 4-1 in the third period?
Oh.
And they gave up the lead. Larsson was the only defenseman who went out there and took command defensively, as far as I could see. And there was one shift where he just made 3 good plays in a row. I'm thinking, okay, maybe the Oilers got this. Maybe they're going to get this. He gets off the ice and more bad things happen. I mean, some people have it in their heads that Ethan Bear is a solid defensive defenseman in a top 4 role. I don't see it, Bruce. I haven't seen it. He hangs on. He hangs in there is what I see.
Right.
But he's not. If you think he's Adam Larsson, like, I get, people, it's based on ice stats, on shot metric stats. And based on our numbers, both Nurse and Ethan Bear have their struggles against top 4 competition. We've seen it consistently with Darnell Nurse. His offensive play has gotten a lot better, trended up dramatically in the last 5 years.
Yep.
His defensive play, though, he's still got a ways to go. He still gets beat off the rush, in corners, making decisions. Ethan Bear, same thing. Oscar Klefbom, same thing. The one guy, there's been a couple guys you can count on defensively to shut down top attacking wingers. Adam Larsson, Andrei Sekera before he got hurt, and Chris Russell. Not so little less as Chris, trending down with Chris Russell in terms of shutting them down. And then in Chris Russell's offense is just weak. Adam Larsson's puck moving is okay. It's not great. It's okay, but it's good enough that he can play in a top 4 role. He can move the puck. And yeah, who are you going to put out there against Nikolai Ehlers? Who are you going to put out there against Tkachuk? If you don't have Adam Larsson, you're going to put Ethan Bear, Tyson Barrie. I really like some of the things that both Ethan Bear and Tyson Barrie bring to their games. They can really move the puck, and especially Tyson Barrie really passes the puck well. But you need players who can defend. You got to have them. So anyway, we'll see what happens, Bruce. Maybe, hopefully he comes back. Now that we were just, the other day there was Spector's tweet, right, where it sounded like he had a very specific number, 3.9 million over 4 years for Adam Larsson. And it sounded to me like, just reading that tweet, reading between the lines, that like maybe there was a deal to be had. And maybe the one other thing this could be is a massive deception on the part of the Oilers that they have a side deal with Adam Larsson, a secret deal, and they're worried about some kind of the NHL getting mad at them for having this. And so they're just putting out all this smoke and mirrors and trying to fool people into thinking there is no deal. What do you think at this point about that notion?
Well, impossible to see through the smoke and mirrors to know really what's going on. But Seattle has the opportunity to talk to Larsson, and so they'll have a better chance to get their finger on the pulse of what's really going on. But they got lots of irons in the fire. I'm sure they're not going to see Adam Larsson as being the make or break aspect of their team, but they might certainly want to talk to his camp and see, because his type of player, as you say, has value. And Seattle, I mean, from where I'm sitting, just right now they have no players and no cap hit, and I'm already projecting them as a favorite to make the playoffs in the weak Pacific Division of the NHL, where you have Vegas and Edmonton, and then a whole lot of meh. And it's unfortunate we're losing Arizona from our division and gaining Seattle, and I think our division gets tougher from losing this long-time team that is always just sort of, down in the lower echelon of the standings, and I don't anticipate Seattle being there. I think they'll be. So they're trying to build as complete a team as they can. And they have to sound out the waters. I mean, in a perfect world to me, they sign Tyson Barrie in the next 3 days and solve their issues with Edmonton. And then Edmonton shores up by getting Adam Larsson and doesn't lose anybody else to Seattle because Barrie's unrestricted. But we'll see. It does sure seem to be shifting sands, and whether it's just as you say, smoke and mirrors, or whether there's any meat on that bone, we'll find out in due course.
We can't know. You're right. There's just there's no way of knowing. Is the truth. Yeah, Arizona. Yeah, they're trending down as a team even now. Like, they're not a good team, and they don't look like they're going to be getting any. Like, they just seem to be coming apart at the seams. Honestly, like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, they've made a lot of mistakes in Arizona, and they've had they lost a couple of high draft picks. They got in trouble with the league. Who was it? They traded for somebody's ginormous cap hit the other day just to recoup some draft picks back. It was Andrew Ladd.
Oh yeah, Andrew Ladd.
They traded for Andrew Ladd. Wow. Okay. So
yeah, they're using that those nice checks they get from the NHL's equalization.
I have questions about that.
Yeah, they do better than Quebec.
Paying for the team, and then they take big contracts on from other teams that are up against the cap limit. And who pays for that? All the teams.
All the teams, man.
Yeah, I have questions.
Hey,
I will have questions until they trade for James Neal, and then I'll be fine with it.
Yeah, exactly. Do you know, like, in this next little window, can the Oilers also sign Larsson, or does Seattle have exclusive negotiation rights on every free agent at this point?
There is a signing moratorium until Seattle's team is announced on Wednesday night, I think, is when it comes off.
Is Edmonton allowed to talk to Larsson?
Nope.
Do you know?
Signing moratorium. Seattle has exclusive negotiating rights for the next 3 days. And then Wednesday morning, they submit their list to the league, and Wednesday evening, it gets announced to the public. And I don't imagine that window would reopen between Wednesday morning and evening. Like, I can't imagine the league being too happy with Edmonton signs Adam Larsson on Wednesday afternoon, 10 minutes before their big announcement. They're going to have that big reveal, and then it's back to business more or less as usual. And after that, if Seattle doesn't sign Larsson, Edmonton will have between Wednesday night and all the way through to the opening of full free agency on July 28th, which is like a full week where the Oilers again would have exclusive negotiating rights. So that's the window to try and sign Larsson again.
So I will say, as Adam Larsson's #1 stan in Edmonton, I think that's the new word, that I'm glad that, there was so much controversy over that trade, justifiably so. I loved Taylor Hall as a player for the Edmonton Oilers. I really did. He was such a spectacular attacking hockey player. Mm-hmm. And it was hard. It was hard to see him go. I do like, though, that 5 years later, there is this outpouring of admiration for Adam Larsson and people realizing his value. And it's across the board, Bruce. I don't see a lot of people saying no to Adam Larsson. I see just across the board admiration for the player. And this is 5 years after that trade. It's nice to see that. What do you think if he was to leave, Bruce? Like, I've spoken quite strongly about my concerns about it. Like, are yours as large as mine, or how would you frame it yourself?
Well, I'm a Adam Larsson stan as well. In fact, the stands are full of Adam Larsson stans these days. So I don't see them as having, Chris Russell has some things in common with him, but he's older, he's way smaller. He's a competitive little so-and-so, but he's not the big greasy stand him up, run him into the corner boards with malice aforethought the way Larsson is. And the old goalie in me absolutely loves the greasy stay-at-home defenseman. So I'm a fan. Like, to me, Larsson, I've called him the Swedish Gator for years. And that's a huge compliment for me because I was a huge Jason Smith fan as well, and for many of the same reasons. They play a similar greasy style of rugged defending. I, I don't know that there's they'd have to go elsewhere and find a guy, and maybe there's a Radko Gudas or something out there on the market, but I'm not sure that it would be a guy as good as Adam Larsson and at near his
Travis
peak. On the other
Hamonic.
hand, 4 years from now, what's you're paying the guy a 4-year contract. What does a 33-year-old Adam Larsson look like compared to the one that we're seeing right now? So that's the risk. So
that is an excellent point, Bruce, and one that I would make, one that I'll make also. Like, as I said, Adam Larsson did have 2 pretty mediocre years in Edmonton, and they were accompanied by injury problems, and he plays a rugged game. He has had injury, bad back. Those things are notoriously finicky. So yeah, they could sign him to a 3-year deal or 4-year deal and get half a good season out of him, and he can get banged up. He is just 28. Like, he's 28. Yeah. He'll be 29 next season. So we're looking at 29, 30, 31, 32 on a 4-year deal. By 32, 31, 32, Jason Smith had dropped quite a bit, I believe. So there is a risk, a real risk, in going 4 years with Adam Larsson. That 4th year is a real iffy proposition, I'm going to suggest. The first 2 years are pretty good bets. Next year, he's had 2 really good years in a row. Nothing. It's like Mike Smith. I think Mike Smith should also be seen as old as he is a good bet for next year at this point. I mean, he showed he can get it done at age whatever the hell he is, 73. Impressive. Why not as a 74-year-old? So I'm saying Adam Larsson next year, good bet. Year after that, probably like a pretty good bet. The year after that, it gets iffy. It's more like a coin flip. And then the last year, that's really iffy. But because the window for the Oilers really is now, and he is such a key player on the team, like I think he was the number 1 signing priority ahead of Ryan Nugent-Hopkins personally on the Edmonton Oilers this offseason. That's how I would rank him in terms of like the internal signings that they have to make. So that'll be a big blow in my eyes if he leaves.
Yeah, well, he's certainly considered part of the leadership group on the Oilers team, right? I mean, really, there was 5 guys that were sort of the core leadership group, and fairly contemporary players, with Larsson actually being Larsson and Nugent-Hopkins, I guess, being the seniors, and of course the troika of McDavid, Draisaitl, and Nurse. And so I know McDavid spoke out very forcefully, I thought, in favor of the Oilers keeping that leadership group together going forward, and they did look after the Nugent-Hopkins situation. The Larsson thing, the way things turned out, I mean, they kind of had to string him out. We've been talking about it for a year and a half, David, how if the Oilers could somehow sign Nugent-Hopkins and Larsson in between the Seattle expansion draft and full free agency, would be the best way to maximize the protected list.
Here we are.
And they've done it with one of the 2 guys. Signed the one, forced their own hand to having to go 7-3-1. And because of that, signing and protecting Larsson, it was still possible, but once the Keith deal was done, it was no longer really possible.
Yeah, and we don't know. Maybe at that point, we don't know. What we don't know is if the Oilers knew at that point that Larsson was most likely gonna test the free agent market when they signed Keith. We can't say for sure. Although things are often kind of fluid, aren't they? Like, yeah,
they had to have a pretty good idea a week ago.
Probably,
way things were going.
One would hope. Okay, Bruce, let's talk about a couple other things. Who do you think Seattle is going to take from the Oilers? Just wait. I wanted you to make an Adam Larsson prediction. My prediction is, Bruce, Larsson will sign with the Oilers before free agency for a much higher number that's been talked about until now. So I'm saying it'll be $4.5 million plus Somewhere
Right.
between 4.5 million per year and 5 million per year. That's my prediction.
Mhm.
What's yours?
For how many years?
For 4 years.
Okay. Yeah, we're not too far apart. I think that 3.9 that was floated out there by Spectre, wasn't it? It sounded a little bit optimistic, and I'm thinking there's no way that he gets a cut from his old rate of 4.17 million.
Yeah.
That he's at least 4.25 and more likely 4.5, maybe 3 years, but at least 3 years, eight-figure deal. And I do think the Oilers lock him up, and it may even go say 4.8, something like that. I don't think it'll be 5 million. But
Just want to see what
what do
Tanev
I
got
know?
on cap. Did Tanev got 4.5? Was it?
4.5, I think it was. Yeah,
But what was the term? I'm just going to check here.
thinking four, but I'm not a
4 years
Calgary
at
fan,
4.5.
so
How can Tanev get more than Larsson? Wasn't Tanev older too when he signed that deal? So it was a free agent deal. Like
he was a
he did
true
go to
free
market.
agent. But yeah, but he went to market and he took the higher offer. And I'm not sure for age. I don't think they're that far apart, frankly. But he's a very fine player, Chris Tanev. Got a
Tanev
belly
is
full.
Tanev is 31 right now.
31. Okay.
So he was a
So,
year or two older than Larson.
right.
Okay, your prediction for expansion. Who will Seattle take, Bruce?
Yeah. Well,
Who should they?
they got a few choices. Um, uh, they got four forwards to choose among, in my view, and they're all restricted free agents. None of them has a contract at this moment in time. Jujar Kara, Dominic Cahoon, Tyler Benson, Cooper Marody, that are all at various stages of development. I'd be looking long and hard at Jujar Kara if I were them. He's got lots of NHL experience, still, 26 years old, just, really in the heart of his career. He's got, uh, he's got some things that you want to have somewhere on your team. Let's put it that way. He's got size, he's got toughness, he's got versatility of able to play center or wing. He's got penalty killing chops. And last year he had a very nice run. He's had sort of these little runs in past seasons where you go, holy moly, that guy is playing really well. And inevitably it would last 2 or 3 weeks or a month, and then that would be sort of the high point of his higher season. And last year he had a much longer run of that after an original dreadful start that saw him get waived early in the season. But when he came back in the lineup, right up until the time he got punched out by Brett Ritchie in Calgary, he played really well. And then down the stretch of the season, he still had some good games. He was certainly bringing it. It wasn't like he got shy or anything. He was really physical last year. He was laying on the body hard, and on an every night basis. And he was a real driving force in in that grinding line the Oilers had. And now a critic might say, geez, the Oilers need to change out the bottom six. The bottom six got pounded last year to the tune of 24 goals, 45 goals against at even strength by one what I think legitimate count. And so if they were to lose a player from the bottom six, that's a place where they could upgrade. That being said, when Ken Holland is protecting two guys from the bottom six in Archibald and Cassian, and making the signing of Devon Shore his first priority in the offseason, you wonder how much of the bottom six they want to change out. So maybe they're ready to move on from Kara. So he's kind of my favorite for who they're going to pick. And I think Dominic Cahoon, they got to look hard at him as well. Decent scorer, and he's got a lower platform. Still, really looking to establish himself, but he's per 82 games in his career, 15 goals, 22 assists. That's pretty decent production for a guy that's never been a power player. He's always done all of his damage at even strength. So I think he's in the mix. And lastly, up front, which I think they'll choose a forward, Tyler Benson, who's only got 7 NHL games. Of course, he's younger, and he's had 2 very strong seasons in the AHL, and seems to be, dare I say, overripe and ready for a shot at the NHL, and maybe Seattle Kraken is where he'll get it.
Nice summary, Bruce. Who would you pick if you were Seattle?
Out
I
of
mean,
that
you have
list,
to balance
my
all the other players they might take, right? They're
right,
constructing a roster, but who do you
right,
think is the best
yes,
bet?
that's the big thing. And of that list, like I think there's lots of wingers out there and so on. I think Kara is the guy that's got the best mix of things that would be a kind of a mortar between the brick style player for Seattle. But that's a wild ass guess, to be honest. And as you say, how they build the whole team, like they're not looking to say, we want the very best player off each of these 30 teams. They're saying, we want to build our own team. We want this type of player, that type. We need this kind of a mix in our group. And of course, they'll be missing the very high-end superstars, center, for instance. I mean, who are they going to get? Jack Eichel? I don't think so. So there's going to be weaknesses built into the team, but they're going to want to balance it as much as they possibly can.
At the last expansion draft, what was it, 2016? 2017, the Vegas Golden Knights were balancing whether they're going to take Griffin, Reinhart, or Jujhar Khaira. It's funny, he's been on the bubble
and
a
he's still on the bubble.
time. Geez, I wish he hadn't gotten hurt. He really had looked like he had turned the corner as a player. Finally. And he gets hurt, and there's big question marks about him again. And it's such a tough game. It is a tough game, the NHL grind, and this happens to so many players. So if Jujhar Khaira hadn't gotten hurt, the Oilers probably would have been protecting that guy because he was getting the job done as a bottom line center, and it was great to see. That really clouds things, though, like with him. Maybe that's just a little recency bias creeping in, and we should look at. But if you look at the totality of Jujhar's career, it's also up and down, up and down, up and down. So I don't think he's the best bet. Cahoon and Benson are very similar players. They're not fast skaters, but they're both sound enough defensively. I know Cahoon had a few moments in the playoffs where he looked bad and in the regular season, but I see them as both fairly defensively responsible players. Benson a little bit more physical, better on the boards. Cahoon and Benson, they're both marked by being excellent passers. That's their NHL quality skill, is their vision and passing with the puck. Both can really move the puck. Neither of them is a very good shooter by NHL standards. Cahoon has had success at the NHL level, obviously, some success, especially 2 years where his points per 60 at even strength is quite high. Benson has not yet had that. Benson's 2 or 3 years younger, though. So in theory, might have a higher ceiling than Cahoon, although Benson's ceiling may be Cahoon. But if he got as high as Cahoon in those really good years, Cahoon had a weird year. He didn't put up a lot of points in Edmonton. And his even strength play was kind of okayish, not great. I'd be okay if the Oilers brought Cahoon back as a third line winger. I don't think he's a top 6 option. I'm also okay with Benson as kind of a third line winger, a top 6 option. Benson being younger, I think I would go with. I don't think there's really any really great picks for Seattle off Edmonton. I'll just say that, Bruce. Like, these are all kind of, as much as I hope Tyler Benson turns into a great player, these are all kinds of iffy NHL players, is the truth, that you could get in free agency, replace in free agency without a whole lot of trouble. So there's not a lot of pain right now for the Oilers. I for sentimental reasons, I like Tyler Benson. He's from Edmonton, and I hope he does well. So if I was the Kraken, I would bet on the younger player in Benson and take him. William Lagesson if they need a physical third pairing D man, and again, his ceiling, if he really developed, it would be like Matt Green, third pairing physical D man who can play 4 or 5 years for your team and really, help out in that, in that role, that rugged role. Right. He'd probably be my second pick, actually. I think Cahoon you could easily get him as a free agent or that kind of player as a free agent. I'm not sure about that. So I would go with Benson or Lagesson if I was them.
Yeah, well, Lagesson. I mean, Matt Green. I mean, he played for the Oilers and played fairly regularly in the third pairing in the playoffs in 06 when he was 22, just turning 23 years old, like way ahead of Willem Lagesson on the
Fair
curve. Yeah, you're right. And I mean, to me, it's a bit of an indictment of Edmonton that 4 years after the Vegas expansion, in which the Oilers didn't even have to protect Connor McDavid or Darnell Nurse because they were both just 2-year pros. And, they had, and we were saying, well, it's a good thing it's this year, not next year, because they'd have a lot more headaches on their expansion year. Well, now it's not next year, it's 4 years later. And we're looking at their expansion list and we're seeing, well, there's 5 forwards and 3 defensemen that they kind of have to protect. And the rest are, I mean, the goalies are their depth of goalies is weak enough that they have, a guy with 1 NHL game played and they're protecting him. I mean, it's the right choice to protect him, but it's just because they have at the NHL level, under contract at least, fairly underwhelming set of goalies. I mean, there's no way. I don't think that that Seattle's taken Alex Stalock. It's certainly not Mikko Koskinen. So, they've got the Oilers. That the Oilers have room on their protected list for Josh Archibald and Zach Kassian, where they are at this point in time, is to me, like I said, an indictment of a less than stellar job of putting a contending team together, frankly.
Here's let's just go through the Oilers draft picks just really quickly from 2008 until like 2015. So to kind of explain why that is just one more time. 2008, and I'm not going to mention their first overall pick, like their first round pick, just the next 2 players drafted. 2008, Johan Motin and Philip Cornett, 4th and 5th round. They didn't have a 2nd and a 3rd round pick. 2009, Anton Lander, 2nd round, Troy Hesketh, 3rd round. 2010, Tyler Pitlick, 2nd round, Martin Marincin, 2nd round, Curtis Hamilton, 2nd round. 2011, David Musial, 2nd round, Sami Perhonen, 3rd round. 2012, Mitch Moroz, 2nd round, Jujhar Khaira, 3rd round. 2013, Marco Roy, 2nd round, Bodan Yakimov and Anton Slapyshev, 3rd round. 2014, they had 2 4th round picks for their next picks, Lagesson and Zach Nagelvoort. 2015, in the 4th round, Caleb Jones. In the 5th round, Ethan Barron. In the 6th round, John Marino, who they let slip through their fingers. 2016, Tyler Benson, 2nd round. 3rd round, Marcus Niemelainen, Matthew Cairns, and Philip Berglund. So it's terrible drafting like that has put the Oilers in this really tough position. Terrible drafting, Bruce. No, there's no other way to put it. I don't think. Am I going too far there?
No, you're not. I mean, you look at the list of the guys the Oilers protected here, and they protected 5 first-round picks in the forms of Nurse, Draisaitl, McDavid, Puljujarvi, Yamamoto. And that's really, the core sort of most obvious protected players on the entire list. They got 2 guys that they picked in the subsequent days, the Saturday of the draft, in Ethan Bear and Stuart Skinner, the goalie with the 1 game played. And they've got a bunch of guys that, that they picked up from other teams, with Duncan Keith now being sort of the showpiece, but also Cassie and Archibald that they kind of were able to pick up that were, just middle tier players to be kind, frankly. And the overall, like the club's failure to draft, like, just sort of
anybody,
rank and file players and anything outside of the top 22 of the draft for years and years. Like they've whatever good the Oilers have been since really the whole decade of darkness has been predicated on their first round picks, with most of them being high first round picks because the team was terrible the year before. So they're, right at the top of the draft table. I mean, all those guys that I named before, I mean, Nurse, McDavid, Draisaitl, Puljujarvi, they all went in the top 7 of the draft. And you look down those drafts, and there's not much that's followed them. And now the more recent developments have been, more 2008, 2014 style, where they don't have even a second or third rounder because they wind up trading them away for depth players and rentals. And now that seems to be the new style, that second rounder's gone, third rounder's gone, fourth,
In the Stu McGregor era, I just read off, that was the Stu McGregor era, except for the better drafting in 2015 with Jones and Bear and Marino. And then 2016 was also the Bob Green era. Keith Gretzky. The players who played the most games taken outside the first round for the Oilers are Tobias Reeder, 478.
Who they
Eric
traded
Gustafson,
before he played a game in Edmonton.
Eric Gustafson, 250. And Jujhar Khaira, 258. So two of the two guys that did make it, Gustafson and Reeder, to some extent, didn't even make it here in Edmonton. So it's not just Stu McGregor. It was the whole development system, the signing system. They just made terrible decisions during the Tambellini and to some extent McTavish era. McTavish did draft Draisaitl and Nurse.
Yep.
And you could say those picks were obvious picks, but they weren't. You can always take somebody else. Yep. So I give Craig McTavish credit for those 2 picks. But
absolutely.
The later round drafting didn't get any better in the McTavish era. Right. Stu McGregor was still in charge then. And so, Bruce, that's why we're in this spot. Yeah.
When you go out and trade a pick for the early negotiation rights for Nikita Nikitin, and then you sign him to a deal with a $4.5 million cap hit that makes him the highest paid defenseman on your team. And then you're lowballing Jeff Petrie, who's come up through your own system and developed, and you wind up losing him because he's about to become an unrestricted free agent. There's, that's very much a black mark on the McTavish era. And really, there's some of both. His big thing was those 2 draft picks, and they're two very core members of the Oilers to this day. So that's the positives, but there are some less than stellar accomplishments on that list as well.
Yes, indeed. Okay, there's a rumor, Bruce, that Zach Kassian may be traded. This has been floating around for a while as well. That Bob Stauffer of the Oilers is saying Zach Kassian has value. Some teams may be interested in trading him. We've heard teams like all the teams that play Washington and Tom Wilson on a regular basis are often mentioned. So there's the Rangers. There's Pittsburgh with Brian Burke. So who knows about that? If they were to lose both Larsson and Khaira, who do they have that hits? Not that Zach Kassian does hit. He does. He still hits. So the thought of losing Kassian, if they were to lose Larsson and Khaira, I don't know about that, but the thought that he has some value doesn't surprise me. I could see teams that are really desperate for physical play, wanting a player who on the face of it looks like he can play a bit and is still a big physical force. What do you make of these rumors, and would you move Kassian for a pick? Let's say a 3rd round pick or a 2nd round pick. Let's say it's a 3rd round pick for Zach Kassian. Would you do that, Bruce?
No retention? No
retention.
Just straight up move on from Kassian, recover a pick. I would. He's been around here long enough time that we know what kind of player he is. We know what kind of player he can be, but we also know that he's very, very erratic. I've nicknamed him Okotoks in the past, it's the very large erratic boulder that's located outside of Okotoks, Alberta, and he's when he's on his game, he's a force like few others, but he's on his game rarely, and it's become increasingly rarely. He's played 50 games since he signed that contract, David. Down the stretch last year, after he signed it, where he got suspended, missed a bunch of time. The play-in series, and last August when he was close to invisible, and then this past season where he had two injuries, and it kind of messed up his season. And then the playoffs where he had, a pretty good game 3. But how many impact games would you say he's had out of those 50 games since he signed that contract? Would it be as many as 5?
Would it be? That's a good question.
Just not like he gets called the poor man's Tom Wilson, but every time I see Washington play, I always notice Tom Wilson and, running around, getting in people's faces, doing the stuff that Zach does do on his good days. But Zach, he has this tendency really to, after, and Oilers twice have signed him to a long-term contract, and both times he responded by playing a lot less well after he signed than before. And I mean, putting him in a new situation, that'd be probably, from the point of view of the other team, they might correctly think that he's going to come here and, have a bee in his bonnet and play the way he can. And I don't think that's impossible, but maybe time for that change in scenery.
Of all the Bruce McCurdy nicknames, Zach Okotoks Kassian is the most McCurdy-esque. I don't think I've referred to Zach Kassian at his peak as the Baba Yaga of the Edmonton Oilers. But I like I don't know if that's going to stick, Bruce. I don't want to break it to you that it might not stick, but I like the the Okotoks.
It's an indigenous word meaning big rock, I think. It's almost literally. Big rocks. And Zach's a big rock that can move. He's a good skater, and he's got that aggressive edge. He's got the thing. Here's the thing, though, David. Here's a comparable to Kassian, and just from the most recent season, Brett Ritchie, Calgary Flames. He's 28 years old, so he's a couple of years, 2.5 years younger than Kassian. 32 games played, 4 goals, 4 assists, 8 points, -5, 24 PIMs, 97 hits, 11 minutes a night. And you compare him to Zach Kassian, 27 games played, 2 goals, 3 assists, 5 points, -4, 15 penalty minutes, 73 hits. It's almost the same player. Ritchie played a few more games. And Ritchie just signed a 1-year extension with Calgary for $900,000. And those kind of players are out there. And honestly, I noticed Ritchie more in the Edmonton Calgary games than I noticed Kassian.
You move him in a heartbeat if you can move him it's like Chicago moving Duncan Keith. Oh. If you can move that contract, Bruce, you move that contract. And you do it quick. So do it. That's my vote. And I know that they need, I agree. Is Brett Ritchie not an RFA or a UFA? Just bring in a guy like that, like a big Bobby Clobber from the AHL, and you'll get as much as you got from Zach Kassian these last few years. So, alrighty. Have we covered all the rumors and turf here, Bruce? Are we?
Yep. I just got a lost connection. I lost the very last part of your comment. I don't know if that'll translate to the recording or not, but
you're back up.
Okay.
Did it just pop back up on its own?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
After about 10 seconds. So
good stuff. People here are really down to the dumps today. I'm just reading some of the Twitter stuff.
Yeah.
People are hurting in oil country today on this Adam Larsson news. It's not a happy moment at all. Is Dylan DeMello a right shot, D? Did he play the right side?
He is. And he's a pretty good player, better than generally rated. and Seattle might well take him. They have a choice between him and your guy Mason Appleton from Winnipeg. So they got two good choices there, but of course they can only take one, and the Jets will keep one.
They can take Appleton, eh? He's not on there. I thought
he wasn't protected, and neither was DeMello. And so, I mean, just to finish the Kassian thought, I mean, it would explain if there's somebody out there that's willing to give a draft pick for Kassian, it might explain why the Oilers did choose to protect him.
Yes.
Because in protecting him, they're not only saving him from potentially Seattle selecting him and trading him for value, but they're actually protecting the value itself. The Oilers are saying, we think he's good enough to protect him, and you know, when you trade for him, you're going to take his salary and you're going to give us something back. And if they didn't protect him, and Seattle didn't pick him, it lowers the platform or what they're trading from. So,
I guess like with seeing all this despair on the Oilogosphere on Twitter, and I just think it might be a time for all of us just to. You just brought up with this Kassian thing, like there might be something we don't know, like people despaired when they protected Kassian as opposed to Benson, like there was all this angst and despair. So you just brought up something that something reasonable that might be in the cards. There's all of these balls moving right now that you and I and every Oilers fan, we have no idea. We're kind of reading the tea leaves. Even the tea leaves are hard to read though, because there could be misdirection on the Larsson thing. Kassian could be moved. So who knows how it's all going to turn out. We can certainly judge the Devon Shore signing and the Duncan Keith trade. Those are two things that have happened. So we can all weigh in to the extent that we want to weigh in on those. We all saw Devon Shore play, so I think people are well placed to comment on that. I'm going to suggest that people aren't as well placed to comment on Keith definitively, because we didn't see Duncan Keith play last year. So let's take a step back from the ledge. And let's see how this plays out. And fair enough to rate Ken Holland's summer in 2 or 3 weeks, and to rate each real deal as they happen. Yeah. But all the hypotheticals that we all get worked up about, including myself, back from the ledge. Let's see what happens. And look up. The sun is covered in smoke and doesn't smell very good. But maybe things will clear off in a couple days.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, it's way premature to rate Holland's whole summer. I mean, we can do as we do in piecemeal, rate this move, that move, the other move. And I've already in this podcast criticized the fact that they don't have many draft picks going into this year's draft, just 2 in the first 5 rounds. But if in the next coming days they were to trade out Zach Kassian and recoup a second or third round pick, whatever it is, that goes some way to fixing that problem and addressing that the team is going to change up the mix in its bottom 6 all in one go, and so it will change the picture. And when we're looking at the pieces, we're not seeing how those pieces fit together, right? I mean, Holland is solving the Rubik's Cube, and it doesn't look like much until it's complete, right? So we'll see where it goes, but this next 2 weeks is massive.
Here's a little news for you, Bruce. This is from Frank Seravalli, and he says, hearing the New York Rangers have made significant progress with the newly acquired forward Barclay Goodrow. Not finalized, because I don't think that's legal. Expectation is Goodrow will be signing a blue shirt once the signing moratorium is lifted, with a 6-year deal. With a get ready, $3.6 million average annual value. Looks like the low prices from what we saw last year and the lack of term is kind of wearing away here a little bit. 6 years for Barclay Goodrow.
That seems like a lot. I mean, he's a good player, and the Rangers only gave up a 7th round pick for him. At the same time, they only acquired his negotiation rights. I mean, he's a UFA and can go to market, so that is his bargaining. His bargaining platform. But that's the same kind of platform that contract that Pittsburgh gave to Tanev, the brother, Brandon Tanev.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Tanev, it just popped in my head too.
He got like a 5 or 6 year deal at way north of $3 million, and it seemed like a lot of term and a lot of dollars. But I tell you what, to this point, Tanev's covered that bet. But Tampa, boy, what kind of team could trade a first-round pick to get a guy like Barclay Goodrow, and then 18 months later trade away the same guy for a 7th-round pick and win the trades?
A team that won
Tampa
2 Stanley
Bay
Cups.
Lightning. Yeah, they sure can. Team that won 2 Stanley Cups with Barclay Goodrow playing an important role on the team. That's who can do it.
Barclay Goodrow. Let me just check something here, Bruce. I just want to check his even strength scoring. This last year.
Right.
1.63 points per 60 in his best scoring year. Mm-hmm. Ranks 238 out of 451 regular. Oh, this is from 2019 to 21. This is a 2-year average.
Right.
And this past year, give me just a second where he ranks.
That's pretty good.
Marginally better, 1.74 points per 60. Right in there with Brock Nelson, Mikhail Grigorenko, who's back to Russia, Joe Thornton, who's going to retire, and Alex Kerfoot, who is headed to Seattle probably. Seems like a massive overpay by the Rangers. I'm glad it's them making that. Not Ken Holland got it right, Bruce. He said it outright. If you're entering into this market, you're going to overpay on term or on salary. In this case, probably both. So, wow.
Yeah. Well, he was a decent player, always noticeable player with the Sharks for a number of years, and he was still on a 2-year contract at $925,000 when Tampa acquired him at the deadline in 2020. And he, all he's done in those, he's played 2 playoff years and played 43 games in the playoffs and scored 12 points. But guess what? He's done this twice. So they're
paying for that.
They had that killer. They're going to lose the whole line, I think, because I think Seattle will take Yanni Gourde, and I think they will lose the both wingers. But if Barclay Goodrow gets that kind of a deal, well, what does that mean for his line mate?
Blake Coleman. He's going to get a Nugent Hopkins contract based on that.
Yeah.
I mean, so it does put the Nugent Hopkins contract into some perspective, as here's the market, and maybe the Oilers will see. That'll be interesting to rate Nugent's contract against what we see in the coming days here. But if that happens, that's a congratulations, Barclay Goodrow. That's what I'll say about it. Congratulations, Barclay. You worked your whole life for a contract like that, and you got it. So way to go, young man.
Guy wins cups in one city, gets traded to New York Rangers and gets paid for what he did in the past. I mean, we've seen that before. How many Edmonton Oilers wound up playing for New York Rangers and getting paid in their 30s for what they did in Edmonton in their 20s?
They did win a cup there, though.
Most of them.
They also had a guy in their 20s, Adam Graves. Let's not get into that. Okay, Bruce, let's leave it there. Thanks for talking today.
All right, thanks for listening, everyone.
And in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.